I was staring at the glowing numbers on my Bloomberg screen. The lights of the numbers flickered softly like tiny stars, and my heart felt proud, quietly proud. My company, Nova Mind Systems, had just reached a value of $4,800,000,000. $4 billion and $800 million. That was a huge number, one I couldn't even imagine fully. It made me feel like I had climbed to the top of a mountain made of code and ideas instead of rocks and snow. I remembered that this was the company my parents had once called useless. 7 years ago, they had sold my idea without even asking me. They had decided that my hard work, something I had spent countless nights building, wasn't important. They had treated it like a toy they didn't need anymore. And now here I was looking at the numbers on the screen, seeing just how wrong they had been. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up. It was a message from Mom. "Call us, Viveka. We have an exciting family investment we want to talk about." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was a cold, sharp laugh. They wanted to talk about investments now, after all these years. Where had that energy been when I was working so hard, when I was coding for 18 hours straight in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn? I remembered the cramped studio I had rented, with its creaky floorboards and flickering lights. I had barely slept, barely eaten, barely moved because I had been building something amazing, something that would change the way computers learned and thought. But my parents had not cared then. I could still remember that night, even though it had happened 7 years ago. It was one of those nights I would never forget. We were sitting at the dinner table. There was roast chicken on the plate, and the smell of it filled the kitchen. Dad looked casual, like he was talking about the weather. "We sold your patent," he said, as if it were just another small thing that didn't matter. I froze. My fork hovered in the air. "You did what?" I asked, my voice trembling. "The company you refused to meet with offered $12,000, Dad said casually. It was a generous offer for whatever this code thing was. I couldn't believe it. That code thing was my life. That code thing was the very thing that would become the backbone of modern AI systems. That code thing was what I had spent nights and nights writing, testing, rewriting, and perfecting. And they had sold it for $12,000. $12,000. Mom gave me that smile she always reserved for moments when she was giving a lesson, when she thought she knew better than I did. "Sweetheart," she said, "now you can focus on something real. That accounting job at Harrison Cole is still waiting for you." I whispered, barely able to breathe. "The patent was mine." "Technically it's ours," Dad replied. His voice was firm, like he was trying to make me understand the rules of their world. "You were living under our roof. You were using our power, our internet. You were dependent on us. The patent office accepted our signatures." I pushed back from the table so hard that my chair scraped the tile floor. "Do you have any idea what you've done? That algorithm could change everything. It could make people's lives easier. It could change the world." Dad snapped at me. "It's worth what someone pays. We offered $12,000, and we saved it for your future. You should be thanking us." "Thanking them?" I felt a fire rise inside me. Thanking them for selling my life's work for less than what Mom spent on her newest bracelet or shoes. No, I wasn't going to thank them. I locked myself in my old bedroom, the tiny guest room I had used when I came home. I opened my laptop and checked my emails. And there it was, sitting in my inbox like a heavy stone in my chest. Confirmation that patent US 11-247-69A1 had been transferred to Titan Tech Systems. My creation, my work, was now in someone else's hands. 7 years later, I was sitting in my sleek Manhattan office, glass towers surrounding me, sunlight reflecting off the windows. My mind was sharp, my eyes focused, and my company had grown beyond anything I had imagined. I heard the crackle of the intercom. "Voss, your 2 o'clock meeting is here," the voice said. It was the Titan Tech acquisition team. I adjusted the cuff of my tailored Dior jacket, the one I had bought with the money my algorithm had earned. I straightened my posture and said, "Send them in." The glass door opened, and 5 Titan Tech executives stepped into my office. At first, they carried themselves with confidence, like they owned the place. But the moment they saw me, the woman whose algorithm had outgrown their empire, their confidence faltered. Their eyes were a mix of respect and fear. And for the first time in years, I smiled. They knew why they were there. Everyone in the tech world had been talking about the legal battle between Nova Mind Systems and Titan Tech. "Miss Voss," their lead lawyer began carefully, her voice polite but cautious, "thank you for meeting with us about the patent." I raised my hand. "Let's be clear. You purchased a patent from people who had no right to sell it. My parents had no legal authority. This patent was mine, and you bought it illegally. We only paid them $12,000, she said quickly. For an algorithm now driving AI platforms worth billions. I cut in. Quite a deal, wouldn't you agree? My phone buzzed again. Dad's name flashed on the screen. This time the country club board meets tomorrow. As a successful tech founder, your membership is guaranteed. Call us. I ignored it and turned back to the Titan Tech team. You have two options, I said slowly, deliberately. Return my patent and face penalties for 7 years of unauthorized use, or... Their CEO leaned forward, tension radiating from him. Or what? Or Novamind Systems acquires Titan Tech, I said. My algorithm, my terms. They blanched. Everyone knew Novamind Systems didn't do mergers. We did takeovers. We've grown from a one-woman startup in a cramped Brooklyn loft to a global powerhouse by reclaiming what was stolen from me piece by piece, I said. You can't be serious, their CFO sputtered. Titan Tech is a 50-year-old institution, and I'm a 34-year-old CEO who just watched my work make your shareholders rich while my parents spent 7 years telling people I was finding myself. My voice turned cold, steel-like. So, shall we discuss terms? The room fell silent, except for the faint whisper of designer suits as the Titan Tech executives looked at each other in panic. They knew this wasn't a negotiation. It was surrender. Minutes later, they filed out, visibly shaken. Zara, my assistant, came in carrying a neat stack of reports. Your parents called again, she said, placing the papers on my desk. They mentioned a family investment fund. I glanced at the latest text from Mom. Viveka, we've always believed in you. Let's talk about how the family can support your company's growth. Believed in me? I almost laughed. I remembered differently. 7 years ago, when I was a hungry, tired, and determined young coder, Mom's voice had dripped with disappointment. Viveka, you have an accounting degree. That's your path. The Harrison Cole position is still available, she had said. It's safe. It's respectable. It's real. That's not where I belong, I interrupted. I slid my business plan across the table. I've developed a quantum processing framework that can change the world, if I get proper funding. Enough. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough, Viveka. Now, in my Manhattan corner office, sunlight glinting off glass towers, I smiled coldly at their words. Support? They had had their chance. We had sold that coding nonsense for my own good. Time to join the real world? I glanced around their pristine brownstone in Boston's Back Bay, thinking of their old money, their old rules. Dad's executive paycheck. Mom's inheritance. Their world. I said quietly, the real world is changing. Technology is the future. Mom's voice was icy. Technology? That's for people who can't make it in respectable careers. Really, Viveka? What will we tell the country club? That night, I packed my life into 2 duffel bags and left. Their signatures might have stolen my patent, but they couldn't take what mattered. My mind. In a tiny one-bedroom apartment above a noisy coffee shop, I started again. Line by line, I rebuilt my algorithm. Better. Smarter. Unstoppable. Present day. Zara, the Titan Tech acquisition documents are ready for review, she said, snapping me back from memory. Also, the Wall Street Journal wants your comment on the rumors. I pulled up the numbers. Novamind Systems stock had climbed another 3% on speculation. My personal net worth? $2,400,000,000. Zara hesitated at the door. Your parents are in the lobby. I closed my eyes for one long beat, remembering every dismissive remark, every smirk, every time they told relatives I was finding myself. Then I said, send them up. They swept into my office like they owned it. Mom in a navy Chanel suit. Dad wearing his boardroom swagger-like armor. 5 years hadn't softened them. If anything, it sharpened their desperation to attach themselves to my success. Sweetheart, Mom began, eyes sweeping over the panoramic skyline and polished marble floors. You've done so well. We always knew it. Did you? My voice sliced clean through hers. I tapped a button, projecting an old email onto the wall. Viveka's still an entrepreneur living off our charity, it read. Dad shifted in his seat uncomfortably. That's ancient history, Dad said. We're here to discuss the family's involvement with Novamind. Family involvement? I laughed, low and cold, like when they had involved themselves in selling my patent. That was a misunderstanding, Mom said, waving a manicured hand. We only wanted the best for your future. My future? I repeated the words in my mind as I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, the skyline glittering with towers I now owned. Let's talk about the future you planned for me. Mom pulled a sleek folder from her bag. Her hands trembled slightly, just enough to make me smile. A family investment trust, she said softly. We could pool resources to support Nova Mine. Resources? I asked, turning slowly from the window. Every inch of me was calm, deliberate, dangerous. You're standing in mine. If you want to see what happens when Viveka turns the tables, I said quietly, and makes an offer you can't refuse, let's talk numbers. I projected Nova Mine Systems' valuation on the glass wall. The algorithm you dismissed and sold? It is now the backbone of our quantum AI suite. Current market cap? $4.8 billion. That's a 40,000% return you threw away. Dad's face flushed crimson. Now see here. We were trying to protect you from what? My voice was calm, lethal from success and independence, proving them wrong. From success? From independence? From proving you wrong. I tapped again. Titan Tech's stock chart filled the screen. It was plummeting. The company you handed my patent to? I said softly. I'm acquiring them next week. Their board votes on my terms tomorrow. Mom gasped. But Titan Tech is massive. I smiled, coldly, calmly, like a storm that had been gathering for years and finally broke. Size doesn't matter when the idea is bigger than the company itself. And this idea? Mine. Always mine. We were huge. I fixed things until they built their whole AI team using my ideas. My own ideas. I worked so hard, and they used my work like it was theirs. My phone buzzed. Another message came from the Beacon Hill Country Club. That was the same club that didn't let me in 5 years ago. They said startups weren't real jobs. Back then, they didn't think someone like me could build anything important. They didn't see my dreams as real. Now, they were begging me to join because Nova Mine went public. It had become very, very successful. People who laughed at me before now wanted to be part of what I built. We understand we made mistakes, Mom said, trying to sound very sweet. She was trying that syrupy, nice voice she always uses when she wants something. But we are family. That should count for something, shouldn't it? I let the word family hang in the air. I looked at old emails from years ago. Viveka, my cousin, was having a breakdown. I sent the emails to Aunt Linera. She refused the offer from Hares and Cole. She didn't want to be part of their schemes. They tried again to say I couldn't handle my own money. They thought I was too young or too careless. Dad stepped forward, looking serious, like a business warrior ready for battle. The past is the past, he said. We want to bring the family under the Nova Mine umbrella. I leaned back in my chair, studying them. 5 years ago, I was a disappointment to them. They thought I was a problem and needed saving from my own dreams. Now, I was the one holding the power. I was their lifeline. I called Zara through the intercom, my voice calm and steady. Bring the Titan Tech acquisition papers and the old patent papers, I said. My assistant came with 2 folders. One was thick, showing how to buy a big company. The other was thin, reminding them of what they did wrong. Let's talk about family, I said softly, spreading the patent papers across the big, shiny desk. Let's talk about how you faked my signature, said you were my guardian, and sold my ideas without asking me, I added. Mom tried to stay calm, but her composure cracked. We had your best interest at heart, she said. I slid the papers toward them. Funny, my lawyers see it differently, I said. For the first time in years, they could feel what it was like to lose control. They called it stealing, fraud, and taking property without permission. Dad's voice was quiet. You wouldn't, he started like he couldn't believe it. I said evenly. Parents who sold their daughter's billion-dollar patent for the price of a used car? Parents who spent years trying to stop me while I built an empire? Now they want a part of what they tried to destroy. The silence in my Manhattan office was sharp. You could almost feel it in the air, heavy and cold. Outside, the sun shone on Nova Mine's quantum AI center. Thousands of servers hummed with the power of the algorithm they thought was just a hobby. They didn't understand what I was building. They didn't believe it could become this big. You don't understand, Mom said, her voice shaking. Watching you waste your potential on coding while others had real jobs. I tapped the screen behind me. The employee list of Nova Mine filled the wall. 5,200 smart people working in artificial intelligence, quantum systems, and security. Bright, brilliant minds from all over the world. See these people? I said. They all work for the daughter you thought was wasting her life. Dad swallowed hard. We made a mistake, but we want to make it right. To be a family again. Family, I said, cold and sharp. I tapped the screen again. Their social media posts appeared. Veiled insults, rumors about breakdowns, smug comments about my ideas. Mom flinched. We were worried, she started. No, I said firmly. You were worried about your image, about what Beacon Hill would think, about how my choices made you look. While I built an empire, I walked to the sleek safe in the corner and pulled out a thin black folder. Inside were my original quantum computer sketches. While you were apologizing for my choices, I said, showing the diagrams, I was creating technology that will change history. Dad's eyes locked on the papers like they were treasure maps. You could almost see the gears turning in his head. What do you mean, something better? Mom asked, confused and a little scared. The algorithm you sold? I said softly. That was version 1. Good but simple. This is version 2, much more advanced. This is the platform that makes Novamind worth not just billions, but trillions once fully used. Mom's composure cracked completely. And we could be part of it as a family, she whispered. I laughed, a sound with no warmth. You're here because you saw Novamind's stock price go up, and your friends finally realized tech is the future. Not to say sorry. My phone buzzed again. A message from Zara. Titan board approves. Acquisition cleared. In 1 week, I would own the company built on my stolen patent. We're ready to give everything, Dad said, sliding a folder toward me. Their whole wealth, their house, cars, and country club membership, was less than what Novamind earned in an hour. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled, and smiled. Let me tell you a story, I said. On the glass walls, a slideshow of old files began to play. My original Novamind business plan. It showed a young woman who believed in herself when no one else did, who lost everything but kept coding, building, and trying. Images of my tiny studio appeared. A mattress on the floor, cables snaking across the room, a second-hand monitor glowing in the dark. I worked 20-hour days, living on ramen and burnt coffee. While others partied, I coded. While others slept, I built. While others settled, I dreamed. The screens lit up again, showing Novamind's empire. Labs in Boston, research centers in Berlin, partnerships worldwide, a global network of technology and innovation. I took betrayal and turned it into fuel. Every insult became motivation. Every condescending smile became determination. Every time they tried to force me into a normal, boring job, it proved I was on the right path. Mom's voice cracked. Sweetheart, we never meant to admit you were right. I cut in. Your daughter saw the future while you clung to the past. Success doesn't look like a boring office job or an accounting cubicle. Another tap. The screens shifted to Novamind scholarships, free coding camps, and humanitarian projects. While they apologized for my choices, I was building something bigger. While they sold my dreams for $12,000, I turned them into billions. Dad tried again. We're still your parents. No, I said softly. You're shareholders in Titan Tech, small ones. That means next week, when the acquisition closes, your shares will be part of the package. At current market value, that's about $15,000. Mom whispered. But we're family. Family believes in each other, I said, standing. Family supports dreams. Family doesn't steal signatures or sell someone's life work for pocket change. I pressed the intercom. Zara, show them out and tell the Beacon Hill Country Club I declined. I'll build my own club. As their footsteps faded, I turned back to my screens. Novamind's stock ticker pulsed green, another all-time high. Beyond the glass walls, the Manhattan skyline shimmered. Every tower is a monument to resilience and hard work. That night, long after the office emptied, I pulled an old leather notebook from my desk. The one where it all began. Pages of equations scrolled in my younger handwriting. On the first page, underlined twice, were the words. I wrote in the dark days after losing my patent, success is the best revenge, but innovation is the greatest legacy. I looked out over Manhattan. Novamind's logo glowed against the night sky. They tried to define my limits. Instead, they defined my fire. Sometimes the most valuable patent isn't the one they steal from you. It's the one you build from the ashes of betrayal. What would you do if your own family sold your dreams for pocket change? Would you cry? Would you yell? Would you build something even bigger than they could imagine? Leave a comment. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you think no one should have to choose between loyalty and ambition, hit subscribe and follow the next chapter. Here's my advice. Never let anyone define your worth. People will doubt you. People will dismiss you. People will betray you. But that's fuel. Fuel for your fire. Keep building. Dream louder than their doubts. And when they realize what they lost, let your success be the answer they never saw coming. Because sometimes winning isn't about getting back at someone. It's about proving to yourself that your ideas, your hard work, and your dreams matter more than anything else in the world. Every long night of coding, every failure, every small win, it all counts. All of it adds up. And when you finally rise, you don't just win. You shine. You inspire. You show the world what's possible when no one believes in you except yourself. And that, I realized, is worth more than any stock, any award, or any approval. Even after they left, I stayed in my office for hours. I looked at my screens and the glowing numbers of Nova Mine. My empire wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about proving that even when people try to take your dreams, you can rise higher than they ever imagined. I took my notebook and wrote more notes for the next big idea. The first line reminded me, innovation is the greatest legacy. Every new algorithm, every new project, every new dream became another step in building something unforgettable. That night, the city felt alive beneath me. Every light, every tower, every office glowing. It all reminded me of the journey. Of every challenge, every betrayal, every victory. And I knew, no matter what anyone else said, I had done it. I had taken something broken and made it stronger. I had taken betrayal and turned it into brilliance. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It isn't yelling. It isn't trying to make someone feel bad. Sometimes the best revenge is building something so incredible that they can't ignore it. Something that proves your worth in every way. And that's exactly what I did.